Okay, we're recording and we are live streaming. We'll be waiting a few minutes for Chief Lucchese. Here he is. Oh, that's Kara Lee who's joining us. We could get started with the announcements. Do you guys want to do that? I guess, or you want to wait for the chief to get it to officially start the meeting? We could do the pledge, approve the agenda.
That's fine. I mean, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, we have people. Oh, here he is. Okay, hello. It looks like we're great. All right, everyone's here, at least for the first part of the meeting. I think Kara, other people are going to be joining us later on for the town board portion stuff.
Yes, I'll be coming and going.
Okay, great. We're going to, I can put you in a waiting room if you want to wait.
No, it's okay. I'll just mute myself.
Okay. I'd like to, if everyone is here, I'd like to make a motion to open the July 2nd, 2020 Town Board as Police Commission meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, and so Julie, David, Dan, and Alex and myself are all present in the meeting. It's sometimes hard for the minutes, so I'm just letting everyone know. And let's please begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Nice. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I've realized why it's so hard to say the pledge, because everyone is saying it at different playbacks, and it keeps throwing you off. It's pretty hard. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second, and I just have an addition.
Okay, yeah, we have. We're going to be removing the. We're going to be switching items 2 and 3, and we're not going to be going into executive session, I think. So.
I just wanted to add, after the conversation on the kind of reform and revention committee, if we could just have a brief conversation on a resolution that I admittedly just drafted up related to citizens on the police commission.
I second that amendment. So 3 will become 2, 2 will become 3, and then Dan's will become, Dan's will be after that.
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so announcements, all town offices will be closed on Friday, July 3rd in observance of the holiday. New Paltz will be, number 2, New Paltz will be participating in the countywide first responder and essential worker motorcade on Sunday, July 5th in appreciation of our frontline workers. Motorcade begins at Village Firehouse on Plattekill Ave and will drive up Main Street to Fire Station number 2 on Henry W. Du Bois Drive. Stand along the route and cheer our first responders, or decorate your car and drive along with the outstanding volunteers of our fire and rescue departments. Line up at Peace Park by 3 p.m. and the motorcade starts at 3:15. So, and I think our public access committee is going to be filming it, and it's part of a countywide celebration. And so we welcome people's participation in that. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to you, Dan.
Sure. Thank you, Neil. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a commission, or a committee rather, that we're hoping to form. The working title is New Paltz Police Reform and Reinvention Committee. And just as a little bit of background, what this is about is this is complying with the governor's executive order. It's Executive Order 203. And what that order is doing is it mandates any community that has a police department, that includes county sheriffs as well, to come up with a committee of various stakeholders to evaluate specific aspects of policing. The executive order as written is a little vague on how this process works, but essentially what it does is it mandates you to hit certain areas. It also mandates you to include various stakeholders, and it requires a report to be rendered to, in this case, the town board by April 1st for adoption to send to the Secretary of State. A failure to do so can actually result in our municipality losing state funding as well. So it's an important mandate that the state has, but I also think more than the mandate, this is something that we as a board had talked about doing on our own as well, to bring citizens into the process to have these important conversations. So what I've done is I've circulated this to the board, and if this is not on the town website, which I believe it is, we'll certainly make it available as well. But there's two major components here. One of the components is those who make up this commission, and then also the areas of focus for this commission. So for starters, what I'd like us to do, and I just want to be clear as well, what we're talking about and what we're hopefully adopting today is not a set in stone policy, but I think it's important to establish a broader framework so that the community can start the work on this process and also just have a guide that's based in the state's mandate as well. So what I'd like to see our commission first start to review, which is also mandated by the governor, is identifying and addressing systemic racism in policing. That's a mandate from the state. Review and recommendations of all current police policies, protocols, and trainings. This is also one of the mandates. This one is not, but I think it's important for us to do, is review of police oversight / police commission roles and responsibilities in training. I want to talk a little bit more about kind of the role of police commission after we talk about this conversation. But what I will say for the moment being is that I think we all have a commitment to have citizens fill this role that they have not done in a while. And instead of us kind of rushing just to do that, I'd like this commission to review our current law for a police commission, what other communities do, and make a recommendation to see if there's something we could actually be doing better than our current law has. And if so, those are amendments I think we should make. And finally, I'd also like us to review what we're calling reimagine and create problem-solving platforms and policing and community protection / support. This is the framework of which I think we should ask at a bare minimum for this group to look at. But I also know that we don't have all the answers to all the questions. So I'm also looking to both the community and this group to also find other areas to review that we haven't listed. Relative to the makeup of the commission, a number of this is state mandated, but some of this I also have included because I think it best represents the unique nature of our community. So
you mean the committee? The committee. Sorry, Dan, to correct you.
Yep. Nope. That's okay. So for starters, we would have a town board representative, which I personally would like to do. That person would act as chair. And relative to this group, I think it's less of a chair to dictate the agenda and more of a chair to make sure that we meet deadlines and that we do have something to produce in a matter that complies with the order. A representative from the New Paltz Village Board as well. New Paltz School District Board of Education member. New Paltz Youth Center is one I'd like us to have, not an employee per se, but actually a younger member of our community who I think would be an important voice to add. Someone from the Racial Equity Coalition and or Concerned Parents, which are groups that we've certainly heard from to provide us with a representative. SUNY New Paltz Student Association. I want to let them determine what student they think best fits the mold for a group like this, whether that's someone from the Black Students Union or another organization that would want to participate. A SUNY New Paltz faculty member, I think, would be an interesting person to add. A member of our religious community, which is also mandated. Obviously, a representative from our police department, whether that be the chief or lieutenant or someone who the chief or lieutenant designates for the purposes of this exercise. I've categorized this as a member of the activist community. So I have that listed as UACT or Resisterhood. If there are other organizations, I'm open to that as well, but I think it would be great to give someone a seat at the table. A resident from Woodland Pond. A resident from Meadowbrook, our Taverns Owner Association, allow the Hudson Valley LGBTQ Center to have a member, member of the Public Defender's Office, District Attorney's Office. I've also added Landlord-Tenant Council because I think specifically renters in our community certainly have a perspective that I think would be important here. And what I'm also recommending for the board too is, and I know I've laid out a lot of people here, instead of us picking the representatives, what I'd like to see us do is actually go to these groups and ask them to provide us who they think best adequately would represent their group in this committee. I think that's really important actually, and I'm excited by that concept. And then I know that as hard as we try, we're not going to be able to hit every community group, and there's going to be members of our community who want to participate who I have not listed. And so what I'd like us to do is right now we're just shy, I think it's about 15 or 16 people, and I don't anticipate every group here will participate. So I'd like to empower this group to select a number of at-large members. So anyone in our community who wants to participate, who either wasn't selected by one of these groups or doesn't fit one of these buckets, would have the opportunity to still participate in this process. The way I'm viewing this that I think would make sense is obviously with a group of 20 or so people, it's hard to get work done. Sometimes it's hard with 5 people on a board, as some of us know. So the areas of focus that are outlined in the governor's executive order, I would like us to think of those as subcommittees. And essentially that we're gonna have someone who's a vice chair lead each subcommittee that'll have the specific mission that we've outlined, or if there are other areas that come up over the course of this project. And then those committees would do the work, bring it back to the larger group of 20 to discuss and vote on. And then that finished product would be the product that we see come to our board. This is all due by April 1st, but for example, the issue of the police commission, that's something that I don't anticipate being figured out on April 1st. I think that that's something that reasonably, if this group meets and they provide us a recommendation in say September, that we as a board should be prepared to hear and then potentially act on that recommendation as well. Some of these topics I think will take more time than others, and obviously we don't know where the mission will go overall based on these conversations. But that's kind of the loose frame that I'd like to see us start with. And ideally, I'd like to see this group have its first meeting by the end of the month. And I'd also like to see this group kind of like we're doing with our own town halls, but solicit community feedback as well. So this is a group that I envision actually doing their own forum to hear from the community and trying to reach out to so we can add as many voices as possible. So what I am recommending, and I apologize for talking so much, but what I'm recommending here is that this framework is one that we adopt tonight for the purposes of starting to reach out to these groups to allow them to select representatives, with the hope that at a following meeting, we can approve those people who have come before us, and then they can start to organize and do this important work. The only caveat that I would make is I would request that people who serve on this group are residents of the town of New Paltz. That's the only caveat I think is important here. But beyond that, I'm open to them providing their own representative. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, or edits from the document, but I'm open to anything.
So I like it, Dan. We've talked about this a bunch, so I appreciate your summarizing it all so well and taking the lead on this. My comment is really to the groups that are picking the individuals to be part of this. You know, I think the goal is to have people who are really representative of more than just their own opinion, because you know it's hard to, with a group of 15 people, we really need to have the members of that need to have a constituency that they speak for. We want to make sure that we can capture every single aspect of the community with this group we're putting together. So just that's something to think about. And I think the whole board feels like this is really a once in a lifetime opportunity to really take a deep look. And I think I would encourage people to get effective listeners and communicators on this committee, because the better the people on the committee, the better the result is going to be. And we really want to do this right.
I had a question that someone asked me earlier. Will we be soliciting, will we be essentially advertising for this? Like for the at-large positions, the at-large?
Yes, I think That's what we should do. But I would really like to see that this group, which has been a self-selected group, do the legwork on that. I don't think that the appointments to the at-large members should be ones that the town board makes, but rather the commission once it's formed.
Oh, so, but if someone, will we be noticing in the paper saying, that it's open to anyone, even people who aren't, necessarily a member of one of the groups you mentioned?
Yes.
Well, yes, but we also, we need to keep the group to a manageable size.
Right, of
Right.
course.
And so part of that is, I think, we get these members that represent groups in there, and we see how big that group is. And then we have a discussion like, how many more people can we add as the at-large members? Because we don't want to, suddenly make it, a 40-person committee, because things just don't get done with a 40-person committee. So,
And to clarify, what I'm really envisioning is the group breaking up into these subcommittees with these specific topics. And so that really then actually talks about, you're talking anywhere from, could be 4 to 6 people on one topic that then brings it to the larger group. And I think that is a manageable group. I do think that 20 people working on a specific topic would not be conducive to bringing good work, but I think this is a way where we can still include those people's voices.
yeah. So Dana, are you, make sure I'm clear on this. So the at-large members, would they be in the main group, or were those at-large members mainly be part of the sub-working groups with a specific idea?
And again, I want to be clear that this is a process that I want to hear from the people that are serving on it and from our community. But the framework of which I think we're starting this from is that this at-large group of what I think should be 20-21 people, once we agree on the areas of focus, which right now, if we approve what we have, we're looking at 4, 3 being state mandates, 1 being kind of a New Paltz specific one, but there could easily be 1 or 2 more, that people would essentially pick subgroups. So amongst the 21, could people have multiple on one? Yes, but ideally I don't think people should be on more than 2, right? So that's how it would work, is that people would have a very specific focus in these groups. But then once the work is done within the subgroups, they would bring it back for the full 20 group conversation.
Okay.
I want to just clarify one thing that I think, Dan, you've making. First of all, thank you, Dan, for putting this together and clarifying this. I think this is a great start to the committee and the structure. And I also want to make room for, I like the 4 subcommittee you've mentioned, but I'd like to also make room for, once this committee is put together, this overall committee, they have room to clarify the work and to mission the work. So if a subcommittee is given, like, this is your subcommittee on police policy and protocol, that the folks in that subcommittee basically mission their subcommittee's work and present that mission back to the larger group for approval, that becomes the mission, that there be a mission confirming process, and that each subcommittee has a mission that they're trying to achieve. And so that those decisions come from the people themselves about what's the work that they want to accomplish.
Absolutely.
And my other concern a little bit is the at-large members. Because we're going to miss groups of people necessarily. I'm not sure just the folks who are already on, who have been picked by their, I'm curious as to how the 2 or 3 or 4 at-large people are chosen, and what that process is, whether it's the existing committee members add 3 or 4, or the town board is involved in that. And there are some folks in the community that are not New Paltz citizens, who would be really additive to what's happening, who have really their roots in New Paltz. So I just want to think about not leaving someone out who could be a real additive to what's happening. So.
Yeah, and what I would respond to that with is, my thought is a group of 21, make it an odd number so we don't theoretically have a tie.
Yeah.
And that with the groups that I've outlined, I think you're talking about 15 or 16. So right now that would be 4 or so at-large appointments. But I also, I've reached out to some of these groups already to see if this is a process they'd be interested in participating in. Not all of them. I anticipate that 1 or 2, for various reasons, will not do that. And I would say that if they do not wish to participate, that would actually just add another seat for an at-large one. So what I would suggest is that we just approve the overall number, and then we allow the selection beyond these groups we've outlined for the group at large to come up with. And I think, and I agree with you, ideally I would like New Paltz people, but yeah, if we have some expert in policing and they live in the town of Gardner and they want to participate in that way, I think we'd be foolish to say no to them, but I do think that we should also prioritize people within our community.
So I have 2 questions. It's related to my previous one. So to clarify, we're not seeking applications directly to the town board at this time?
That's correct. So what we're doing today is we're approving the framework for these groups to send us their members. So we would just via vote approve those members. And then for whatever is left that hasn't been approved yet by us, that's going to be up to the committee to fill those seats.
Okay, maybe I just didn't hear well enough. I think that's great. I do think it's really nice for those people to have some power of decision making and add to their group. And the other question I had was, are these, for people who might want to know what's going on in these meetings, would they be filmed in any way, or, would minutes be taken? What do we think?
Yeah, I thought of that. I would like us to treat it like we would treat any of our town committees, okay. Where someone would take minutes, we would post those minutes. I'd like us to do a format like we're doing now. Ideally, because of the sensitive natures of this topic, I'd love to do this in person. But obviously the public health scenario is largely going to dictate whether that can happen or not. But yes, I'd like to think of this as we would any of our committees or commissions, and how they would act with the public.
Which most of them are not filmed, except for the planning board is, but yeah. Maybe we can cross that bridge. I think filming costs money.
Filming costs about $120 per, yeah. And we do not have the money for that. They could record it on a Zoom like this for free, yeah. but we can't send someone to film.
Great, thanks.
If there are no further clarifications, yep.
Dan, thanks. I know you and I spoke a little bit about the makeup. I guess in just some of the things that I've been thinking about since our conversation, yep. In terms of the focus on the sub areas, I appreciate, obviously this by executive order has to focus on law enforcement, but I do think, and I don't know if it can be made more clear in the description, but I think we need to include the focus, a more holistic focus on government itself, how government uses the police. And I think if we don't do that, my fear is that we will be back here in 5 or 10 years in some way, shape, or form. How government uses police is just as important as how we police. And I'm going to use the perfect example is the pandemic. I mean, who did, from the national to the state to the county? I mean, as we're sitting here today, I received 2 more law enforcement referrals for social distancing or, sort of things that are, really not the purview of law enforcement. And where we have, as a police agency, had to push back on this push to actually arrest and cite people. So if we're not looking at how government utilizes the police force, then I don't think we're going to be missing something. And I really think that has to be a central tenet amongst one of these groups is my input there.
So I agree with you. And admittedly, this may not come across in the title, but we kind of have this subgroup, the reimagine and reinvent. And that's actually what I kind of also think is a part of that is like, what are we asking police to do now? Does that make sense? Is there a way we could do it better? Does it have to be the police doing it? That's also why I think that this needs to be a rolling conversation, because some of these categories I think can reasonably be accomplished quickly, and some of them are going to take people some real time to really dig deep. And I really appreciate too, Chief, that you know, I acknowledge that a lot of this is going to fall on you guys as well to be the resource of when it comes to talking about policies, when it comes to talking about things that you're doing that we're not aware of. I do see you guys as an essential player in informing the group on those things. But to your broader point, that is the intent with one of the areas of focus. We can phrase it in a way that you think better meets what you described, but that was my intention.
And I get that. I just think it needs to be specific. I really do, because, you know, as I said, everything right now is law enforcement centric, and I get it. We own that as a profession, as an agency. You know, I'm not trying to push that away, but, you know, when we talk about things like the garbage law, you know, we enacted a garbage law where the only mechanism of enforcement was arresting somebody, no code enforcement whatsoever. And so when the police department arrests a hauler, and there's, you know, an uproar. And so what I'm saying is government puts officers in untenable positions. We're being set up to fail in many ways. And I know there's no intention in that, but I just think that has to be a central focus if we're going to correct some of these problems.
Can I? Oh, Alex, please.
This is a great follow-up with what Chief said. You went through a bunch of categories, and I wasn't sure if you'd mentioned something, Dan, about mental health and communication. And I think that's a big part also too of government, you know, wording and communication between people, and making sure that you have somebody on these committees. And it could be maybe somebody who's roaming, who works with all the different committees, that works on mental health and on communication. So that the way in which people talk to each other, the way the wording is done, almost like a community arbitrator that deals with how you use language, which in turn ends up being, you know, how laws are written or how government is applied into this. Because so many times the difference between a word or a phrase, or the way in which you're thinking about the mandates, or thinking about how we're going to process all of this in a greater scope, has to do with how the language is written. So having somebody that works very closely with these groups, that really works with mental health, communication, and writing, is something that I think would help us as well.
Can I just say, to the Chief's point, I think instead of defining, you know, you've defined 4 areas, Dan, and I think you caught a lot in those 4 like subgroups, but let's not get so specific on what those subgroups look like. Let's identify issue areas, and let's include the Chief's issue area about how government uses. So let's give them 6 or 7 issue areas and say, you fit this together into what subcommittees are tenable, how many people should be on a subcommittee, and lead them toward, let them lead themselves toward how to cover some of these important issue areas. To Alex's point, I just want to say that the issue of language justice and making sure, because so much of this has got to be focused on equity and undoing implicit racism in everything we do. And so having someone with that expertise in the room, it's not going to be possible for them to be at every subcommittee, because unless you're going to hire them. But someone who's at least on the main team, or a member at large who's really focused on how does this exclude, and ultimately how do we make sure this includes everyone in our community in a fair and equitable way.
Yeah, and I would hope, and I know we can't mandate this, that when we go to these groups that, you know, I would really like to see this to be a very diverse group as well. And I mean specifically racially diverse. So that is the hope of mine too, that if that's something we can achieve here, I think it's important to include those voices. I actually would say that's pretty essential.
Can I say something? I agree very much with what you just said, Dan. That would be really important. And I did want to say to Chief Lucchese, I think that's a wonderful point you bring up. And it's, you know, reimagining the communication between government is definitely, it's time for that. But also, I remember from the meeting, the big Zoom meeting, at least 2 village board members brought up that issue where they'd like to be involved, I imagine, in the sort of communication between police and government. So I think they'll be happy with that.
The last thing I do want to say on this is that I know that we haven't gotten this all right and that we haven't covered all the bases here. And I just want to like make it clear that, and I think I can speak for everyone, we're not trying to solve all the problems here. We're trying to start the dialogue and allow these conversations to happen and allow our community to drive a lot of this conversation. We don't have all the answers. We don't have all the life experiences. There are other people who need to be at this table. So this is the intent, is to start that process. I just want to make that very clear. This is not one that as a town board member, I want to drive, but rather just organize to lift the voices up of those who don't necessarily have a voice, usually in these issues.
I would like to make a motion that we accept this rough proposal and adopt the rough framework of this, subject to further clarity especially on issues of issue areas and members at large and how people are appointed to this committee, subject to those details. But I would like to see if we have consensus here that we want to move forward with Dan's plan that he's outlined, and to ask Dan to be the town board representative who's going to kind of lead the charge on this.
Second?
I'll second.
Yeah, I agree. And just let's make sure we have the caveat that we may get more direction from the state at some point of exactly what we have to do. I think people think we're moving pretty slow on this, but I think we're moving actually really fast. We haven't even gotten all the guidelines yet. And so eventually we have to conform with those guidelines, and just as long as everyone's aware of that. But our goal is to do much more than we're being required to do.
And actually I want to make one other point, because I'm getting text messages from residents on it, and I think this is important. The mandate of this by the state is actually just that the supervisor make appointments to this group, and it is very specific in the subsets of what that group is. What we're trying to do here is do this differently to make this a more inclusive process. And based on the other commissions that I've seen established, even in our area, but around the state, and I'm happy for someone to show me one that does it better, because I think we're open to making those adjustments. I have not found one yet that brings in more people in a more diverse way and that empowers the residents as much as this one does. And if someone can find one that does that more and they think we should do that, I'd really appreciate them bringing that to us so we can make those adjustments. But thus far, I feel pretty confident in saying this is probably the most citizen-driven one in the state.
Yeah, so if people read through the executive order, it's really the supervisor and the police chief that put this whole thing together. I wanted to make sure that the board was fully on board and fully involved in this, and that the community is fully on board, and that we really do this right. So I appreciate your helping out on this, and I look forward to the process. So I'm all in favor of this. I think it's great.
So we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's Christy. Dan, could you send me the wording on your proposal for the minutes?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So number 2 on the agenda, we're already 10 minutes over time.
Oh,
We haven't even started the meeting yet, really.
So I have a quick resolution that I want to, sorry, I'm talking a lot tonight. So this is a resolution. I'll read it and I can send it around later. But whereas the Police Commission of the Town of New Paltz consists of 5 members appointed by the town board, or in the event the Police Commission is abolished, the town board of the Town of New Paltz. And whereas the New Paltz Town Council has served in the dual role of Police Commission since 2014, and whereas the New Paltz Town Council has formed, which we now have, the New Paltz Police Reform and Reinvention Committee in accordance with Governor Andrew Cuomo's executive order, that now therefore be it resolved that the New Paltz Town Council commits to form a police commission comprised of non-elected residents upon the formal recommendation of the Reinvention Committee. And very quickly, because I know we're over time here, we've already said as a group that we're committed to bringing citizens back into the role of the police commission, which is something that changed prior to any of us being on the town board. But I think it's important for us just to take a formal vote to just really say that that's a commitment we have. But we also want the residents of our community to see if there's a format in which we can do it better. Every community does it differently, even our neighboring ones. But I do think that we have an overall commitment to bring citizens onto that board.
Second?
So I'd like to move that, that resolution.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
All right. Do we want to talk about, we're going to talk about the public comments and questions that we had at the forum 2 weeks ago. And I know that there were some people that thought this meeting, the meeting this evening was going to be a similar format. This is our regular town board meeting, but because of that forum, we postponed our police commission meeting where we have to take care of the normal stuff. We pushed that back to this meeting. And so we normally close these meetings to the public and let people comment through the clerks because we don't want to get Zoom bombed and stuff like that. And so this is and we also have some presentations that we're already holding up our attorney and some volunteers. We're going to talk about the community preservation in a few minutes, but people can still make comments to the clerk. I think they already have. We've gotten some during this meeting. We're also going to have another public forum a week from this evening. I think at either 6 or 7 o'clock, where we're going to take questions and try to have a dialogue. And then I think the chief wants to maybe talk about, David mentioned earlier that we're going to have another meeting as well. I think Thursday morning. And I'll let the chief talk a little bit about that.
Talk about that.
And so, you know, we hear you. We're working on some of the questions. We're going to be putting them all out. Hopefully, we'll get more, and we're going to be answering them as best we can. Does anyone else want to say anything about that?
Yeah, just that there are going to be various different ways to dialogue together. That was just the first way. That was just for us to listen. We thought it was important for us to listen as a town board and as a police chief. I think through the committee structure, they're going to have methods of seeking feedback from the community. We've heard that people want affinity groups so that there's no town board members and no police chief there. We're going to let you organize yourself around that. We're not going to specifically organize something that you may not like the format for that organization. So please form your own way to get feedback. And if you want someone from the town board there, invite us and say, please come and listen to questions and answers. The chief has also designed a way to take feedback and to answer questions, and hoping, you know, Rob, that you might want to share what you've planned, and that I'll be attending at least, and all will be invited to.
Yep. So, sorry.
I'll just say real quick, we do have answers to sort of frequently asked questions, right, David? Are those going to be published soon? Oh, you're on mute.
I think we're still finalizing some of those answers. Okay. Some of us have commented, and we still, you know, because it's a town board, not one person answering for themselves, we're still formulating answers that we feel like we can offer in consensus. It's a difficult process unless we're going to just be, here's David's answer, here's Julie's answer, here's Alex's answer, which we can do also. But if we're going to come to consensus on some of these answers, I think what you're seeing so far tonight is some of our answers to those questions through our actions.
Yeah, and so how would they check for the answers? Where would they go to find, you know, when to check back? And tomorrow, or
on the town board, but it'll be when we're finished with it. We're not yet finished with it, so I can't say.
Okay.
It will be on the town board's, the town website.
The town website, thank you.
I also just want to add, which I usually do along with everything else, if there's anybody in the community that has questions in Spanish and wants anything translated into Spanish, or anybody in the Spanish-speaking community that wants to talk to me and be the town representative, I'm happy to do so.
Thanks. And so with that, everyone good to go? We can get move over to the monthly report. I guess.
I think the chief was going to give us a quick update on the event he was doing.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, obviously we should have started this meeting even earlier than 6:30. I'm learning my lesson. We're running late, so, but that's fine. Chief,
in terms of outreach, just to update the board. I have continuing to meet with various groups and individuals throughout the community. I have, and that'll be obviously the people that I am meeting with will be listed in my June monthly commission report. So you'll have a comprehensive list of that. What I'm going to be doing tomorrow, I'm going to post on our Facebook page, and I'll ask Kathy to post it on the town's website as well. On our website is really trying to initiate a monthly dialogue with the community. So just as part of the ongoing efforts that I've been already engaged in and trying in dialogue, I'm going to be meeting or looking to have like open dialogue or open meeting sessions with the chief or any member of the police department. It may be me and a member of the town board, as well as maybe another member of the police department as well, just to have coffee, sit around, answer questions. Just because I didn't want to wait until the end of July. So for the month of July, I'm going to have one on July 9th at 9 o'clock. I'm going to be down at the Water Street Market. Anybody's welcome to come down, have a cup of coffee, can speak with me, ask questions, whatever. It's no agenda, no format. And then I'll do it again on July 16th. I'm going to change up the venue and probably keep that one as a morning session as well. And then after that, I'm going to be doing these on the third Thursday of every month, so that there's a regularity to it. But I would definitely be mixing up the times as well as locations, so that maybe it'd be a noontime thing for someone who can make it. I don't want to just solely make it in the mornings. I want to try to, really move the times around, and I'll make those announcements in advance so that people know when we'll be out there, and try to get that out on social media as well. If I find out that really having one set time and one set day of the month is best, then we'll do that as well. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of outreach.
Great. So
Thank you.
July 9th at 9 a.m. at Water Street Market. That's next Thursday. The chief will be there. I'll certainly be there. Other members of the town board may be there. And we'll design our own structure. People may have different conversations about different things, but we'll get a chance to meet and dialogue some more.
So I guess if we're on, just in terms of police announcements for us, that was one. The other announcement is that July 24th, there will be another virtual Narcan training. This one will be in the afternoon. People can visit the opioid prevention team website, opioid prevention NP website, and register for that. So once people complete that, we'll distribute, participants would receive a Narcan kit and a drug destruction pouch as well for all people that participate. The drug destruction pouches, though, are available at the police station anytime that they want, as well as our med return kit. In terms of the monthly report, just a couple things I wanted to bring to your attention. Moving forward, I don't know how you want it. There's always a lot of information in these, so I know we focus really, we go to commendations, we go to the uses of force, but I know that there is a lot more information in these monthly packets, so I don't know if we want to change how we go through that, next at our meeting in July 16th. But just to let you all know, in terms of the report itself, there will be a change regarding how we list complaints, pending personnel complaints, and NIAs. Moving forward, anytime we get a complaint that goes above the level of just speaking with the supervisor, or something that a supervisor can resolve, we will be opening up an internal investigation, and we will then investigate that matter as fully as we can. So I will be eliminating some of those sections. It'll just be an internal affairs investigations, and then it'll list on there what they're for. This allows us to better track them, and then allows us to comply with the changes in 50A. In terms of the May monthly report, there were no defensive actions. And there was a letter of commendation, a couple letters of commendation. The first was a letter of commendation that went out to Sergeant Koch, Detective Judge, Officer Bunce, and Officer Halstead for assisting with a birthday parade for a young resident here in New Paltz in the month of May. We received a thank you letter from her family. And then the other letter of commendation was from the family of Joseph Zaplicki, former retired New York State trooper and a former New Paltz police commissioner who passed away. His son is a member of the sheriff's department. We assisted with because of COVID, they were not able to have a funeral service, so there was a emergency vehicle parade, and we participated in that. So they wanted to thank us in that. It was myself, Officer Kraus, and Sergeant Fuco. And that's it in terms of the monthly report, unless anybody has any questions. And as I said, as we go through these, I know you're somewhat pressed for time tonight, but as we go through this, in terms of going over even the cover sheet, if there's any questions that you have as we move forward with any of this.
Great. Looking forward to it. The update on the body-worn camera policy, and then we have the Intimate Partner Violence Intervention Program review.
So in terms of the body-worn cameras, they've been deployed. Our policy was issued out to personnel. They're out and they're being used. And members have we've reviewed policy. The way, just to try to give the members an ability to acclimate to what they're doing. What we did is in the initial 2 weeks, we told the officers to go out, wear them. We wanted them to activate them as much as possible, but get used to having them and remembering that it is a tool that they have on their person. Policy went out June 10th, excuse me. And then it will actually take effect on August 1st. So the idea is that, again, we want to have the officers have an opportunity to acclimate to this before there's any, punitive measures should they not activate it when in the situation that they're supposed to. But then August 1st, the policy becomes effective as well. So far, no issues with the cameras themselves. The members seem to be getting used to them. They seem to be a pretty useful tool. I don't know if I resent everybody the policy itself that I had sent a while ago. So I didn't know if there's any questions in that. I just wanted you to have that as well. Any questions on the policy okay. In terms of the Intimate Partner Violence Intervention Program, so we signed, I sent a letter, memorandum of agreement that we would enter into this program with the Ulster County District Attorney's Office. The Intimate Partner Violence Intervention Program was a pilot program started when DA Carnwright was in office. It was through a grant with the city of Kingston, and DA Clegg is now looking to try and expand that. So our PD and Saugerties PD are two that are getting on board with this. It does require a little bit more work in terms of tracking, but the program is really designed to address the offender. More often than not, when we talk about domestic violence, the focus and a lot of it should be on the victim, but the idea is this is focused on the victim, but also the actions of the offender and what is driving them to try and stop that from occurring. So this is tracking offenders, and then utilizing that information in terms of charges through the district attorney's office, impact panels that an offender may be part of in terms of some sort of restorative justice method as well. We're just getting into this, so I don't, I'm reviewing some of the materials that I've gotten, but we are, as I said, our hope is that we'll get the green light and we'll start working on this in the coming months so that we will, it will take effect. And then any questions on that? Okay. And then the last thing I know you have on the agenda is the referral for hire for part-time police officer, Michelle Yeager. We would like to request permission for the town board, or refer the hiring of Michelle Yeager as a part-time police officer to the town board for tonight. I apologize, I don't have all of Michelle's information because I'm away this week. Michelle is from over in, I believe she was a resident at one point over in Dutchess County, but she's working here in Ulster County. She's coming from part-time work with the town of Marlborough Police Department. And she went to the Dutchess County Police Academy, and we would be looking to have her hired as a part-time police officer, and we would start her field training hopefully in the next week or so.
Chief, do you mind, just because I know the community will ask, explaining where we are staffing wise and why we're being asked to make that hire now?
We've been down one full-time police officer for about 5 months. With that being said, we're now down with Officer Cisco on leave. We're down a second officer, and we are potentially looking at the loss of a third officer who's going to be transferring to another police department. So that would bring our full-time personnel down to 10. The idea here is that we would start out Michelle Yeager as a part-time police officer. She is on the list. The hope is that things work out for everybody, and that we would, I would definitely be coming before you to hire her as a full-timer in the next, probably next month. When we lose our third officer, it will decimate us in terms of ability to cover tours. We're already having to mandate officers to work multiple doubles. This is not something we want to do. Obviously, there's a financial cost, but for me, more importantly, is the well-being and health of the officers. When we have officers that are working multiple, working 1 or 2 doubles in a week, you're talking about officers that have gone, sleep deprived, and decision making is severely impacted. Temperament can be impacted by that, and it's a recipe for disaster.
And it costs more.
Yep.
And it costs more.
And there is cost. But again, the overtime is going to be significant. We're already seeing an impact on that in terms of coverage. When we lose the third officer, it will be even more so. And as I said, that's one factor, but the health and well-being of the officers is actually, for me, a real important, even more important, because that poor decision making in the moment because you're lacking sleep could have a real, an adverse effect on their health, the safety of the community, or the officer, and then maybe a financial impact as well. So I think, I understand that there's always a concern for budget, but I think we need to start to look at filling some of these full-time slots, or we are really going to be taxing officers, especially in going into the summer months when people are going to be taking off.
Thanks, Chief.
I'd like to make a motion to refer the hiring of part-time police officer Michelle Yeager to the town board.
Second, David.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And that's all we have for the Town Board as Police Commission. I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
I second, Alex.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, I would like to make a motion to open the July 2nd, 2020 New Paltz Town Board meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And with that, I'd please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Bring my little flag again.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Just a question on that. Rob, are you waiting for us for the part-time officer to be approved?
No, as long as you're all set, and if you don't need anything, I'll sign off.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
But I'd like to remove the executive session, add approval of the 6:24 special meeting minutes.
Second, with the revised agenda.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Or just make a motion to approve the consent agenda, 2A through 2D.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And with that, I would like to hand it over to, there's going to be a short presentation. I'm not sure if it's Ted or Kara or Christine, but please let me know and I will give you permission to run the screen.
Thanks, Neil. That would be me.
Okay. I think you're all set.
Okay. All right. Can everybody see the slide that I just put up?
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. This is Kara Lee, and I'm here on behalf of the Ad Hoc Community Preservation Task Force that has been working over the last 6 months together, made up of members of the Environmental Conservation Board, the Clean Water Open Space Protection Commission, and the Historic Preservation Commission, plus a few other interested people. And at the last town board meeting, we made a presentation on our new community preservation plan. And we told you that we'd be back tonight to tell you more about creating a community preservation fund and establishing a real estate transfer tax as a source of revenue for the fund. So I just want to back up for a minute to fill you in a little bit on the Hudson Valley Community Preservation Act, which was passed by the state legislature in 2007. And it allowed communities in Westchester and Putnam County to create dedicated non-transferable funds for protecting community character, and to use the fund to implement a community preservation plan and to acquire interests or rights in real property in accordance with the plan and with willing sellers. And it was to be a fund that could receive funds, revenues, gifts of land, or other funds. And also it enabled communities to create real estate transfer tax, which before that, communities in New York State did not have local community real estate taxing authority. So this is a long list, but these are the kinds of things, the kinds of places that a community preservation fund can be used to protect. And as you scan through this list, you'll see many of the categories that we described last week when we were talking about the plan. And I've got that little sidebar over there just to point out that it includes an allotment for stewardship of lands that are protected by the fund. The Act also addresses land management for the lands that are protected with the fund. And it specifies that it allows for public use and enjoyment that's consistent with natural, scenic, historic, and open space character. So that could be passive recreation, or it could even be something like visual access in a protected viewshed. It specifies that it limits improvements to enhancing access, such as trails and maybe peripheral parking. It addresses culturally important properties, and importantly, I think in our situation, it enables towns to enter into land management agreements with not-for-profits such as land trusts, which is very much what we do now with the Wallkill Valley Land Trust. And finally, it specifies that the lands that are acquired with the fund cannot be sold, leased, exchanged, donated, or otherwise disposed of without an act of the New York State Legislature. Two things that a community preservation fund, a community must have in order to establish a fund is a community preservation plan, and that's what we were looking at last week. And we designed our plan and worked with Ted Fink to make sure that it met the requirements of the Act. It has to identify priorities for the community and has to identify all the parcels that would be eligible for protection. The other thing that is required is a community preservation advisory board that can advise the town board on making acquisitions or management decisions about land that's been protected with the fund. So that brings us to the funding source, which is, again, specified. A real estate transfer tax can be imposed. It can be up to 2% of the purchase price, and it's paid for by the buyer. It also allows for an exemption for homes that would be equal to the Ulster County median home price. And all those things we'll talk about a little bit more. So for New Paltz, a couple things I want to point out. First of all, and David, you brought this up at the last meeting, this would be an alternative to our current bond model, which costs New Paltz taxpayers every time we use it. The real estate transfer tax would be a one-time payment paid by the buyer. And again, 2% with a $245,000 exemption. And that's determined by the Commissioner of the Department of Taxation and Finance. And by our calculations, that would generate approximately $179,680 in revenue annually that would go to the Community Preservation Fund. So this is a slide kind of about how that tax works. So you have the property value that's taxable minus the exemption. So there's the exemption at $245,000, a tax rate of 2%. And if you look down at the numbers in the blue and white boxes, you can see that for a home that was selling at $245,000, there would be no real estate transfer tax because of the exemption. For a $300,000 house, that exemption would apply, leaving $55,000 subject to tax, and then the tax is on the right-hand column. And you can see how the tax progresses with the increase in price. So how does that fit with the New Paltz market? And I want to thank John Orfatelli, who's on the Zoom call, for helping to prepare these analyses for us. So this is data from 2014 to 2019, and it shows the distribution of the value, the sale price of homes in New Paltz. And as you can see, the majority of homes in New Paltz are in the $200,000 to $350,000 range, with a scattering of properties that are considerably higher. And that yellow box highlights the sales that would be exempt from the tax, which is close to 40% of the sales would be exempt. And of course, that's at the low end of the market, which is, from our point of view, I think important to try and preserve some affordability for people. This is just a pie chart to show the distribution of the revenue, and you can see that it's primarily from single-family homes. So just a couple of takeaways about the RET, the real estate transfer tax. first of all, it's a sustainable source of revenue for open space and historic preservation in New Paltz, and it really benefits the entire community. The second thing is that residents of New Paltz will not experience a new tax, which I think is important. The exemption will benefit buyers at the low end of the market, protecting affordability for first-time home buyers, which again is important in our community. And that it will fund a program that will protect the qualities that have attracted buyers to New Paltz in the first place. And buyers will be investing in maintaining the value of their properties, because we know from many studies that have been done that open space and historic character, people value them, and it enhances the value of their properties. So just in conclusion, the town of Red Hook was an early adopter of this concept. In fact, they did it in advance before the Hudson Valley Community Preservation Act, and they've had a lot of success with it. And the supervisor, Robert McKeon, explains that the program is like an insurance policy, both for the community and the home buyer. And I think it's a good way to look at it. I think we all know that people in New Paltz really value the out of doors here, our setting, our historic character, and this is a means of protecting those in a sustained way. So at this point, that's just a quick overview, and I'm going to turn it over to Christine Shale, who's been working with us. She's from Rodenhausen, Shale, and Polidoro, and worked with Red Hook on their law, and she's going to walk you through the next steps of moving this forward. So thank you very much.
Can I just ask a question, Kara?
Of course.
One of your early slides said it limits enhancements to, I didn't understand what that meant.
So I guess another way of saying that is it allows enhancements, but in a limited fashion, because the idea is to protect the natural qualities of the places that are being protected.
Like
So
we couldn't buy a piece of property and put like a soccer field there.
Right, it's meant to stay largely open. There might be small enhancements like some trails and foot trails and things like that, but not meant to be like, we're buying this, I'm going to put all kinds of infrastructure on.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So hello, good evening. My name's Chris Shaw, and I'm, as Kara said, with Rodenhausen, Shaw, and Polidoro. I think you know my partner, Victoria. I am going to walk you through the resolutions that you have before you today to consider this. The process here involves adopting local laws to implement the program. There are actually 3 local laws that you would be considering. The first is to create a preservation fund. The second is to approve a plan document, which is what you've been working with Ted on. And the last one is to actually adopt the tax that you're allowed to adopt pursuant to the state statute and in accordance with the specific requirements of that state statute. That last state tax provision is subject to the mandatory referendum. As you might expect, because this is an action under seeker, we're going to have to evaluate this under seeker. And Ted has prepared an environmental assessment form to start that process. So the first thing to consider would be a resolution classifying the action and establishing the board to act as lead agency in a type 1 action. This is a type 1 action. Think of it as a similar to adoption of your comprehensive plan. It has a fairly large impact from a overall perspective, although it doesn't have specific impacts as to property specific characteristics. And Ted, do you want to add anything to the EAF discussion here?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So the Part 1 EAF is simply a examination of the overall project itself. And what has yet to be prepared is the Part 2 and Part 3 environmental assessment form. And following the meeting tonight, if the board considers and passes the laws, I will have those documents prepared. And that's actually the assessment of the potential for any adverse environmental impacts as a result of the actions. So that document will be prepared and well in advance of the public hearing. But all you need in order to begin the seeker process tonight is the Part 1 environmental assessment form, which you should have in your packet.
And Mr. Supervisor, would you like me to go through all of the resolutions first and then you can consider adoption, or how would you like to do these?
I'm happy to take your lead, whatever you think is the best way forward.
Why don't we walk through all of them, because then you have a context, I think, for what you're looking at. So the second resolution that you would be looking at would be a resolution to schedule a public hearing on a proposed local law relating to the establishment of a community preservation fund and advisory board. And that will set a public hearing for July 16th to consider that local law. And each of these, as I said, is by local law, so you are required to hold a public hearing on the adoption of the local laws. So that is local law B. Again, that's the creation of the fund itself. The local law recites much of what Kara just went through in terms of the purposes and permitted uses of the fund. It does establish an advisory board. The purpose of that advisory board is to make recommendations to the town board as to acquisitions and uses of the fund in a manner that is consistent with the plan that the board has adopted. The board has ultimate authority to make acquisition decisions, but the advisory committee's role will be to help the board by reviewing the plan and the specific properties and issues at hand and bringing a recommendation to the board based on their expertise. The draft of the law has been created with an assumption that you will have 7 board members of that advisory board. You may choose either 5 or 7. That's one of the things that the statute allows you to select. The second law that is the second resolution that is presented is a resolution to schedule a public hearing on a proposed local law relating to the adoption of a community preservation plan. And that is the adoption of a local law which essentially incorporates by reference the entirety of the plan that you've been discussing with Ted that's been developed for your review and consideration. So that plan is the substance of that law. And then finally, the last resolution is resolution to schedule a public hearing on a proposed local law relating to a real estate transfer tax for the Community Preservation Fund. And that is to adopt the transfer tax at the 2% of the consideration. That is a local law that very largely follows the specific language and requirements of the state law. There are very specific exemptions in the state law. The board is empowered by this special state law to enact a tax, but it cannot pick and choose which exemptions it wants to permit. The exemptions are embodied in the state law, and you're allowed to enact the tax, and then the exemptions will follow, if that makes sense. So those are the 4 resolutions that would be before you tonight.
I just had a quick question. Ted, you said, I just didn't understand. It said assessment for the type 1 action, assessment of adverse model impacts. I'm not really sure what that means.
Yes, the seeker regulations require that for any type 1 action, a full environmental assessment form be prepared. And that environmental assessment form consists of 3 different parts. The first part is simply information about the proposed action, which is adoption of the plan and so forth. Part 2 consists of a series of questions that asks about potential impacts on land and water and on community character and those sorts of things. And if there are any potential impacts that are identified that are important or large, then those are discussed in a Part 3 environmental assessment form that consists of a narrative discussion of what the impacts are, whether or not they rise to the level of requiring some sort of mitigation measures to reduce or avoid any adverse impacts that are a result of the proposed action. In a case like this, and this is the third of the community preservation plans that I've worked on, the plan and program to establish a community preservation program is basically designed to protect the environment. And but there are other things that we'll be looking at: consistency with the town's comprehensive plan, and any other policy documents that are important to pull into the discussion of how this proposed project either is consistent or isn't consistent with the town's policies and with protection of the environment, which is the basic purpose of SEEKR.
Thank you.
So Alex, for me, I mean, maybe I don't want to confuse it, but for me, a lot of these things were confusing when I was like, well, how could this have an adverse impact? And the SEEKR is really like, so if we were building like a sewer plant, we would be filling out the exact same form, and we would be required to do that type of assessment to make sure that, you know, if there were negative impacts, we were addressing them. So that helped me understand it.
It makes sense now. I got it.
May I ask a few questions about the transfer tax? Is it mandated at 2%, or is that the highest level we can go? That's the first question. And the second question is, can you just explain the exemption? The last thing you said, Richard, was like, once we enact the tax and the referendum follows and approves that tax, the exemption then comes from that. Can you just explain what you meant by that?
Sure, and so the 2% is the maximum that you're permitted to enact under the law. That's one of the considerations for the board. What I mean by the exemptions is, for example, there is an exemption for the median value, house value, and that exemption is in the law, and it's not optional as to whether or not you would include that exemption. That exemption will be part of the law if you choose to adopt it. Similarly, there are other exemptions which are very typical, such as a conveyance in connection with a tax sale. You know, there's a whole laundry list of exemptions which are applicable here. So that's what I was referring to.
We don't get to, so David, we had originally thought like, oh, well, maybe we could have an exemption for first-time home buyers, but we're not allowed to do any of that.
The state has already created these exemptions. I get that. We do get to choose the tax rate up to 2%. That is something that we do get to choose. Can I just ask one other question, Kara, of the, I know you've been presenting this and given us plenty of time for feedback, and I'm sorry that it's coming at this time, but I'm more and more concerned about access to open space and who has access to that space and who doesn't in our community, specifically to what I consider to be a real lack of accessibility in some of the open space that is in our community and that is on our land. I'm continuing to be concerned about how exclusive some of these areas are. And can you speak to access as it regards how access is part of this community protection fund?
Sure. We had a discussion about that last night with our committee. So the language is kind of broad. It says that the land has to be available for public use and enjoyment. It doesn't specify what kind of access. And I think it leaves it in the hands of the community on a case-by-case basis to decide what is appropriate access based on what is the capacity of the land to have people on it. So, you know, a sensitive wetland is going to be different than some other things. So I think it really does stress the importance of public use, but it does leave it to the decision makers locally what that will be, with the exception of farmland. And it makes it clear that for active farms, access is not permitted, which is, you understand.
Yeah, I'd love to see, and if it may already be there, to prioritize access where it makes sense. And,
Yes.
and so that these spaces aren't cordoned off spaces, but they're spaces
No.
that the public gets to enjoy, especially folks who don't have a lot of open space, that this becomes places like the Millbrook Preserve or things like that where people can access these spaces and get a chance to enjoy the outdoors.
Yes, but I
think
do
it's a-
think
Oh,
I
go
do
ahead.
think it'll be in the hands of local decision makers what that access will be like.
Yeah, to some extent, I think it's a requirement. It also, I think it depends on the type of interest that is bought in. Like, so you could buy an easement on someone's property so it stays open. And we've done this already, but that just because the town has bought an easement doesn't necessarily give people access to the property. But if the town buys the property like Millbrook Preserve, then it's totally up to the decision makers how that access is granted. So
And we know how they do business, so that's good.
anything else? Do you want to walk through these, or what's the next step?
So I think the next step, if you don't have other questions, is to go back to the first resolution, which is the lead agency resolution for seeker purposes, and consider adoption of that resolution.
So I'd like to make a motion to adopt the first resolution declaring the town as lead agency.
Second, Julie?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And so this, yep.
So for number 2 is the,
So the resolution to schedule a public hearing on proposed local law B proposed of 2020 relating to the establishment of a community preservation fund and advisory board. And I'll just note for the board that we just letter these because we can't finally number them until they are filed, and sometimes things are not adopted in the same order. So we just letter them so that it doesn't get confusing. Something that becomes a number, becomes a different number later on. So this starts out as B, because you did one earlier this year. All right?
yes. So I'd like to make a resolution to schedule the public hearing on proposed local law B, proposed, of 2020 relating to the establishment of a community preservation fund and advisory board.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And, okay, just keep moving on.
Yes, and I think one thing I wanted to note, you had
These-
already scheduled these for what time? We wanted to make sure we have a time certain here.
I was going to schedule all of these to occur at 7 o'clock on July 16th
Right.
at our next meeting. And we have, I already set up a special Zoom meeting that people will have public access to, and we're going to publish that Zoom link info. And so anyone will be able to come in and make public comments via Zoom. There are also comments are welcome anytime to the town clerk. And so that this next one would be resolution to schedule a public hearing on proposed local law C proposed of 2020 relating to the adoption of a community preservation project plan.
Second, Julie?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the last one is a resolution. I'd like to make a motion to schedule a public hearing on proposed local law D of 2020 relating to a real estate transfer tax for the Community Preservation Fund.
I have a question on this
Sure.
one. Does this, I did not read that local law. Is this the establishing at the 2% level? And
Yes.
I just want to have a short discussion on whether we want to choose that as a level, or is that we want to go into public comment with that and you know, we want this law to pass.
Yes, we do. We want this to pass.
The referendum is gonna, you know, all of our citizens are gonna get to choose that. So I just want to be clear that we're giving, you know, being as careful as we can and clear as we can about a law that will actually pass.
And so after the, you know, the board can discuss it, but if, this is my question for you, Christine, after the public hearing and the board has a discussion, we can change the rate and change the law, or do we, if it's not significant, do we need to then schedule another public hearing?
Right, if you make a change like that, you would be looking to schedule a further public hearing before you consider adoption of that part of that last law.
Okay. And so we could do that. We would have to have a special meeting 2 weeks later on the 4th Thursday in August. And so we can get this on, we need to have these passed by, so we can get them onto the ballot in time for the referendum.
Yeah, and can I just ask if Red Hook and other communities that have done this have enacted it at 2% level and have had success with their community in passing that referendum?
Red Hook passed it at 2%. Warwick's is lower. There's a little different. They're mainly focused on, I think, ag land. Maybe Ted could speak to that.
Yes, that is correct. They're focused primarily on agricultural lands.
And so, David, I think if you look at the beginning of the presentation that Kara gave, I think she said this would raise about $179,000 a year. Kind of to put that in comparison, over the 6 years, that would have been about $1 million, roughly. We've spent about that much of the bond already over the last. When was the bond passed? In 2012? Kara? John, before that?
2006.
But, we've spent probably about maybe $700,000 in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
And so and this is also expanding for expenses beyond just the open space. And so we want to make sure that this passes, but we also want to make sure that it passes and then it's useful, and that we don't create so little money that the public has expectations of, well, now you're going to preserve open space, and we have no money to do it. So
David, we looked at the likely revenue from 1%, and I think it was something like $119,000 a year.
Yeah, I think, Kara, I think your chart had a typo in it. The revenue for 245K and 2% is more like 239, almost 240,000 yearly. Okay, the number you gave, Kara, on the chart was, I think, more like 180. That was with 1.5%.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's like you left it. Yeah, so I just want to make everyone understand the annual projected annual for 2%, 245 exemption is more like 240,000 yearly.
There was one slide that had that accurate one. I was curious about the difference.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so Christine, if we as a board wanted to have a discussion about this, changing it from, keeping it at 2%, when would we need to have that? Would that need to have that out for tomorrow for the public notice or for the public hearing?
So, you're having a public hearing on a law that's been placed in front of you.
Okay.
If you, obviously, if you're not ready to do that, you can schedule another special meeting like right now and wait. But we do know that we have a fairly limited amount of time to try to, get through these procedures in order to get it on the ballot. So I think you would, whatever you're deciding today, that's what you're going to have the public hearing on. If you change it, between now and the date of the public hearing, or if you change it at the public hearing, you'll have to schedule another public hearing then, as you indicated, at the end of the month to consider adoption of the revised version of the law. So, okay.
Yeah, I'm not looking to break consensus if the rest of our board members feel like 2% is the right level.
I know a lot of thought has been in, has gone into that. Kara or John, is that something that maybe, would it be appropriate to add any more of the reasoning and the thinking behind it?
Well, Kara, you've got some more information from the Trust for Public Lands, right? Some information from them.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I think David's exactly right. And we've gone back and forth on this a whole bunch. We want it to be high enough so that we actually have the tools that we need to preserve the land, but not so high that it doesn't pass. Right. And so I think that's the big debate. And we've gone back and forth on it. And I think in the end, we were trying to make sure that we, 2% worked in Red Hook, and it's been very successful for them. And so that was like one of the reasons to say, well, it seems like that pass there, we have a lot of the same interests in, open space here. We don't have some of the higher end properties as many that, they have all these mansions along the Hudson River that have really helped with their fund. And so I think we're leaning towards the 2%, just to try to make sure that there was enough money in the fund to do what we need.
I think the two numbers that we might be looking at is 2% or 1.5%. But I think when we looked below that, because of the exemption and so on, it wasn't enough to go through all this effort if we went below 1.5. And then we thought, well, how big a difference is there between 1.5% and 2%? And it's the difference of maybe $500 on a $200,000 or $300,000 house. And so we just thought that perhaps it made sense to go for the higher level.
One thing I think about is the 2006 open space bond passed with over 60%, and that that was a increase in people's taxes. And this is just this is not a new tax. It's just having their homes. If you're buying a home and you're above the exemption rate, some of it will be taxed.
Yeah.
We're also going to be placing this on a ballot during a presidential election. So I do think that the community participation that we will see in this will be far greater. And I think that's actually an important factor as we go forward with this, is that we really will have the opportunity to hear from the largest group of our community that we could expect for a local referendum.
But the other thing to keep in mind is this is our big chance, and it's really important that it gets passed.
I mean, yeah, I'm conscious of a couple of things. The property taxes, school taxes, really, really high in our community. A lot of people feeling like I can't live here anyway. With the current tax rates and things like that, people complaining they can no longer live in their own community. But some of them may get exempted out, on this kind of thing. But it basically, you have to look at this as this brings down the selling price of your home. This will affect the selling price of your home in some way, because the buyer has to pay it. So that whatever that rate is, that someone's going to take into consideration what they're willing to pay, because this is part of that purchase price.
So David, that people, we talked to some realtors in Red Hook.
Yeah.
And they say that is one argument. The other argument is that by preserving open space and community character, you're actually, it's kind of a net neutral, because people know what they're buying into, and they're buying into a community where that is not going to disappear. And so the price of the houses actually go up because of these enhancements.
Yeah, and I would just, don't get me wrong. I'm not looking to say we shouldn't be doing this. I'm just trying to get it right, so that, I'm not looking to move from 1.5, 1.5 or 2%. you know, I'm okay on either one. I do think we have a tremendous amount of open space in the area too. So it's like, we need more. I know I want more, so I'm just bringing up the point of that tax rate and what kind of feedback we might get. You know, numbers mean a lot, and you know, the difference between $1.99 and $2 seems to be a much bigger difference than it really is. I'm willing to, as I said, I'm willing to go along the consensus of the board on 1.5 or 2%. You all feel really good about 2%. I'm willing to go through that. And if the community really, you know, tells us that's not the right rate, we'll just have to go through a slightly slower process potentially. But we'll hear from people one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest downside would be that we have to schedule a special meeting with for the 4th meeting in August to have the public hearing and pass the law so we can meet the referendum deadline.
Yep.
Of August 3rd.
Yep, I've said everything I want to say, so I'm ready to vote if you all are.
All right. All in favor?
Mr. Supervisor, did you get a second on that?
Oh, sorry. Thanks.
Second. Discussion? More?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. How are we doing? Is that all we needed?
I think we got through all of them.
Great. And I think that's all.
Really great work on the community preservation plan. Just extraordinary, really great work. Very exciting.
Yeah, it really kind of pulls it all together, I think, which is really nice.
I agree. Really nicely done. Thanks, guys.
Excellent work. Thank you.
Well, it is an amazing committee, and of course, Ingrid brought tremendous skills to it. Really appreciate that.
I have to say that I am just unbelievably impressed. You know, that level of expertise that we're able to get on these committees are, you know, maybe, you know, Ted was a great help too, which we couldn't have done it without Ted. But I'm just, you know, the spreadsheet that John put together was just amazing. And the GIS work that Ingrid did, and then all of the writing and editing. You know, I don't want people to think that the town board didn't really have a lot of comments, but there just wasn't much to add, I think. It was, you know, A+ material. So thank you very much to everyone who did it. And
I really appreciate everyone's dedication. It's really been apparent. A top-notch group here.
Yeah, meeting weekly for 6 months now. And some meetings before that. So thank you. Great. Well, we'll see everyone in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Christine.
All right, thank you all very much. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you for walking us through it, what is very complicated.
Sure.
So thank you.
It seems simple in the end.
Yeah.
How they presented it, especially those pie charts, John.
Okay. With that, I wanted to talk a little bit about this. The Governor Cuomo has a recent executive order about quarantining travelers, and I just wanted to, you know, I sent an email out to the department heads, but it's always nice to make sure the town board is in agreement with me on this. And so this is just Governor Cuomo's recent executive order requires that anyone arriving from states with a high infection rate, this includes New York residents who are coming home from, say, a vacation to one of these states, they have to self-quarantine for 14 days. And so I want to have a town policy that is in alignment with this order. People, under the CARES Act, if people are subject to a state mandated quarantine, they may be eligible for federal coverage of their 2 weeks of quarantine time, but it's a one-time 2 week period. So if they or if they get COVID, they get that 2-week federally paid sick leave, but they only get it one time. So say if someone went on a trip to Florida this month, and then they came back and they had to quarantine, and then next month they decided to go on a trip to another state, Texas or something, they could not get the federal support again for those 2 weeks. And I just want to let people know that if they choose to voluntarily go on vacation somewhere and they're not eligible for the federal paid sick leave, that they'll have to use their own personal sick leave. The town will not just pay their salary for 2 weeks while they have to quarantine. They have to use their own sick time.
So Neil, your distinction is they only get to use that one time.
That's the federal decision.
Yeah. So
right?
you're just implying that if we go on vacation, there's quarantine policy. You don't get paid for that time if you have to quarantine at home. Already used it.
You get paid, but you have to use your own sick time.
Yep.
And we're happy for you to use your sick time, especially if you need it. But we can't, we can't just pay your salary because you're quarantining. And I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of that before they go away, and that this is a town board decision and not just the supervisor being cranky and saying this. So, if that's my my motion is for is the town board all in favor of this policy? And if there's some discussion, we can talk about it. And if not, all in favor? David seconded it with his thumb.
Yep. David second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 And that's all I had for that. And then the last is a motion to hire part-time police officer Michelle Yeager.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
And if no one has anything else, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Neil, can I just ask, Christy, it sounded like we're getting comments during our meeting. Is there a way to understand what people are saying, or is that it's not really appropriate for us to look at that right now? It's kind of like what we'll answer next time.
Some are confrontational, some are not. If you want me, I could read them to you.
Well, I kind of think of this as like a regular town board meeting, and we take comments before the meeting,
Gotcha.
and we don't. We're here to actually listen to the public, but also to kind of get our jobs done, and for us to meet and not have a continuous dialogue.
So these comments that are coming through now, we'll get copies of those so that we can respond to them?
They'll be in the minutes, and
Right.
we'll all get copies of them.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, great. That's enough for me. Thank you.
Okay.
And so, for me, part of it is that once if they're sent to the clerk, they're part of the official minutes, and they're on the record. For me, I'm not really interested in, and also technologically, it's hard for me to run the video chat, and I have a hard enough time running the meeting, if you couldn't tell.
As long as we can see them, so we'll be able to see them, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
And that's all I have. So,
I second the motion to adjourn.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And wait, you guys want to have a special meeting next Thursday to have another community discussion forum, or do you want to just do the Thursday morning at Water Street Market?
I'd like us to do the Thursday evening forum and then agree to publicize it tonight. And if we can, and I know it's more difficult, I'm happy we listened for the first one, but to try to have more of it be a conversation as well would be good with the community.
And do you have a thought of the structure for that? I mean, because I would like to have a conversation too, but boy, can that get unwieldy if we don't moderate that well. It can become just an argument. And so I'm not suggesting that I have a structure myself, but how do we manage that conversation so it doesn't become one voice and against another voice, and then everyone doesn't get a chance to speak and all that?
Maybe it could be timed, so that we have it on the clock and everybody gets 3 minutes, or.
we could do like a 3-minute conversation, max 2-minute response back and forth.
Mhm.
So the whole,
I like limiting. If you want to speak for 3 minutes, that's it. You get 3 minutes, and you can, want to ask a question, then we get a chance to talk for 3 minutes together, but not that it becomes, we take it over.
And
I
maybe
think the reality is democracy's messy. So we're learning to figure out Zoom, and it's a hard topic. So I think we should just let the public know that we're going to try to do our best, and we hope that they try to do their best too, and we'll do our best to have dialogue.
Yeah, Kathy's going to help with the moderating as well. So while I'm trying to like set the Zoom and mute and unmute and do everything, because I want to participate in the meeting as well. It's hard to be like the tech guy and to have coherent thoughts at the same time. I'm trying to do everything. So
Doing a hell of a job.
yeah. So I'd like to make a motion. I don't have to make a motion. I'm just going to call a special meeting, and Christy, if you could notice this, we're going to have a special meeting on Zoom, and we will make the link publicly available on the town's website for 1 week from this evening at 7 p.m.
Neil, can I add something or ask something?
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
Would it make sense? I don't want to, direct it too much. We shouldn't direct it too much because we want it to be open, but to help frame it, is there anything we would want to, ask the comments to be framed, be focused on? I know it's policing, but just wondering.
I mean, I don't have a preference. I mean, I want to hear what people have to say, but it should be on policing. I don't want people to come and talk to us about the
water.
How hot it is or something. I guess they could, but we do that at other town board meetings too. So but, I mean, I'd like this to be focused on policing, but people can come and talk about whatever they want. But we may not be ready for it. But
Can we just ask Neil that like both meetings be like, I'm going to be attending the morning meeting. I'm not sure if I'm going to be attending the evening meeting. That people can say, oh, there are 2 opportunities here.
Yeah, I think
you can come in the morning and have a conversation outside with a cup of coffee. You could be on the Zoom call at night. This way, we're giving people different ways to interact, and like, these are all, and I'm sure there are many more ways. So.
Oh, and that's all we're trying to do here. I mean, we do the Zoom because we did that before, but I'm open to anything. And if people have a better idea of how we could do this, I'm happy to do it. I think the main rationale is because people feel like they have not fully said everything they need to say. And so we're still kind of stuck in a COVID world. Zoom seems to be it. So let's use the Zoom. But if people have other ways, I'm all ears.
I would like to suggest centering the voices of people of color. And if there's a way for us to make sure those folks get priority to speak, that's something that is we have to do better at that.
Yeah, I mean, we let everyone last time who wanted to speak, right? And we don't have another board meeting to work on Thursday night, so we have even more time. I'm happy to let everyone speak, till the room is empty. Let's talk. I'm less comfortable deciding
who speaks when.
Who am I to determine who is or is not a person of color? It makes me nervous. And deciding, who has priority. But, my goal is we'll let everyone speak who wants to speak, and Kathy is going to be in charge of that. So she gets to decide, but raise your hand and we'll get to you. And then the other thing, there were some complaints last time. I don't know if people could get in or we are limited to 100 people by our Zoom account.
Mm-hmm.
If we, it would cost us $200 a month to have the next level Zoom account, and it's just a lot of money.
Now, Neil, if somebody asks a question, gets answered, and goes off, can somebody else come on?
Yeah, they can do that.
After they've asked their question, and they feel like it's been answered, we can encourage people to log off to give other people a chance to log on.
Yeah, we can, and then they can, after they've asked the question, we'll be streaming it on YouTube, and then they can watch it on YouTube. You know, it's really up to the participants to kind of do what you said, ask their question and log off and give someone else a turn. You know, we have an unlimited number of people that can speak, but if everyone logs on and stays on, we could kick people out.
Well, I mean,
But
they should log off and then they can watch it on YouTube. So they can continue to see the, you know, the back and forth, but they don't really have to be logged on.
Yes, I would prefer that, and maybe we'll make sure we announce that this time, just so people are aware that, you know, we're kind of constrained by the account we have.
Mhm.
And maybe we could, since we will be answering some of the questions from last time, or as many as we could, and they'll be published, maybe we can also encourage people to look at that first, so that in case their question is answered already.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that may be very helpful. You know, it just seems like I can imagine myself, even if someone else asked the question and it was the same question I had, if I felt that it had not been answered or maybe wasn't going to be answered, I would get up and ask the exact same question, because you know, I want to make sure that, you know, I'm trying to reiterate that this is important. So I think by answering, it may be helpful as well.
So this is for Thursday.
Thursday, does 7 p.m. work for everyone? Do we want to do it earlier? I mean, for me, 8 is actually better, because then the kids are all in bed, you know. But 7 o'clock, you know, it's tough on my wife to do everything, but 7 is a pretty good time too. 8's starting to get late, then we're up late, and so.
I'm open for any time. I was thinking maybe earlier might be better, just if we anticipate there being a lot of questions, but if that doesn't work.
Like 6:30.
We could do 6:30.
I was going to suggest 7:30 based on what Neil said, but
No, don't do it for me. You know, it's fine. You know.
well, I mean,
7:30, we could be up late then. And
I get up at the crack of dawn.
I'm getting up with the kids early too. So
are we really expecting to allow it to go longer than 2 hours? I know I can't, like, my mind would be mush.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know that we should do that. I don't know that we'll be coherent, or, you know, like, really, I get.
I don't know if all of us, I mean, I feel good sitting through the whole thing. If there are board members who need to pop out, I'm also fine.
Really? Okay.
Just
Okay.
rolling with it.
Great.
how about we start at 6:30? All right.
I prefer 7, I'm just going to say, but that, you know, in case there are others that pipe up.
I'm like, whatever you guys want.
Okay, let's stick to 7, because that's a time that we've been using for every.
I
Great.
think 6:30 is often dinner time for so many that.
I think you're right. Mm-hmm.
It is for us, so I haven't eaten dinner yet tonight.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'll see you in a week.
Okay.
Bye. Have a nice 4th of July weekend.
Oh, that's true. You know, go out for the cavalcade.
Yeah.
Go sit in traffic, have fun.
It's on my street almost.
Yeah.
It's on my roof.
Bye, guys. Dinner's
Bye.
burning. I gotta go.
Bye.